under other business.
We are on the air.
Okay, we're on the air. Well, welcome to the planning board meeting of, whatever day this is.
21st.
21st of February. Anyway, so we had minutes of the last meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the amended minutes.
I'll second that.
Okay. Ed,
Agree.
Approve.
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 One of you approve. Yeah, you guys can take turns.
No, it's all Mike tonight. It's all Mike.
It's all Mike.
It's his big night.
Mike night.
It's his big night.
All righty. So that brings us to the only item on our agenda, the Glen at Goose Rocks. So you will.
Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Jason Vafiatis, Atlantic Resource Consultants, here on behalf of Creative Coast Construction, Mr. Trudeau. And we're here before you for final subdivision approval of the Glen at Goose Rocks, which is, as we discussed last meeting 2 weeks ago, if you want to think all the way back then, is a 9-lot subdivision in the town of Kennebunkport, off of Goose Rocks Road. And I believe we're here before you for one waiver on road length. I think we've talked about quite a bit that maximum length of road you can have in a dead end is 1,000 feet. And going around the cul-de-sac, we exceed 1,000 feet, but by just a smidge. And so that's one waiver we're looking for, and I believe the fire chief was on board with it, and everything's good there. And you have in your submittal packet, last time we were here, we talked about, there were a couple of things Mr. Simmons pointed out. On the financial capacity, we're supposed to point to section 5, it was sort of left blank. It was a little later in the, earlier this week, I sent Galen the revised application that said refer to section 5, as well as an updated, the state certification for an LLC, I forget what that's called, or certificate of good standing, and that is good for 2024. I have extra copies of those if anyone wants to see them, if they didn't get printed or sent around. And I think that's it, and I believe we're here with a public hearing as well tonight. So I'm happy to answer any questions from the public when we get to that portion.
Okay, well, let me check with the board first. So, Larry, you had more questions?
Well,
about this last time.
actually, my only question is, we got the flood report, flood management report, and feedback from Acorn. And there
Yes.
were a few items in there that might affect your plans.
So we'll go over that really quickly. I didn't want to dive right into that. We got this Monday, which was a holiday for us, but I got it Monday and went through it.
Yep.
Most of these things are little technical things that we fix on the plans, and I can explain a little bit about that process, why things were different. So we submitted the DE permit application and went through revisions during that process, while I think that we were outside of the town process. Remember how we had to come back and we were working through the DEP, and that was taking longer on the review period. And so what happened was that the lots through our DEP permitting, we actually reduced impacts and created bigger buffers and areas like that as we were going through that process. And so the notes typically, and I'd like to say that it doesn't happen often, but it happens all the time. So we have a set of notes on the town plans that are referring to certain sizes and things. And then we've reduced the project. So the physical, if you put a scale on the plan and measure the impacts, that matches the DEP permit, but the notes, the notations and stuff don't get updated. It's just I don't want to call it a scrivener's error, but it's a coordination item that there's always one or two, and that seemed to be the biggest ones. And then there's some items about some stormwater modeling calculations that certainly don't affect what you're looking at on the plans, but we would just go through and revise those. I would have loved to have had a chance to get the revisions in before tonight, but 2 days, it's hard to turn that around.
The ones that stand out to me was the application states 6.1 acres will be developed, but on sheet C-101C that says only 5.8 acres, 5.81, and will be developed, of which 2.81 acres are impervious, which was higher than what was permitted by the DEP. So that seems to be something that could affect your actually drawings.
So actually, no, so the drawings are the smaller version. We need to update the text.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
so,
this actually refers to a drawing. Sheet C-101C. Anyway, there seems to be a discrepancy between the acreage shown on the application, the acreage, which, well, is shown on this drawing, and then the amount of impervious acreage, which was higher than what was permitted by the DEP. So there's three quantities there. If you could just take a look at that one.
yep, so it's,
Okay.
yep, so comment number 3, comments on water quality. Is that the one you're on?
No, that was the first one. Then the second one was, there's something about the buffer flow path length calculation. You need a 70-foot flow path, which is required, and that refers to sheet C-309.
Yes, and so, yep, and so so the DEP, because there were limited options and we had conserved so many other areas, that they approved that buffer as designed.
Okay. So, I mean,
Right. Yeah.
I'm mentioning the ones that might affect your actual drawings.
Yeah.
Okay? And then there's a stormwater permit for C-101, 101B, and 305 through 313. Anyway, it talks about stormwater law permit, I don't know what that is, but anyway, again, it refers to some sheets that you may need to just double check
Sure.
what's on the sheets. And then there's some things about DEP approval. Apparently DEP has already approved gravel wetlands and bioremediation cells, but then the observation by Acorn is that porosity of the filter media maybe is modeled too high, 33% instead of 30%. I don't know if that makes so much difference, but again, you may want to just, so I guess my overall comment was, please go through these comments from Acorn
Oh, sure.
and then either adjust the drawings as needed or comment on how it's been resolved. I don't want to go through all of them, but you get the idea.
Oh, yeah, yeah, and we would
These are
fully do
relatively
that.
minor, I
Yeah.
think, but it'd be great to be consistent.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
my main question. That's it, really.
Yep.
Still great, great work here, but just a couple of details.
Yes, yeah, and I'm sorry, I apologize, I'm probably not being clear. We totally will respond to this within the next week or so and get
Okay.
that back in. I just, it's hard for us to turn it around
Oh, sure.
that quickly, yeah.
Sure.
So which is my point,
I
yeah.
got you. That's it.
Okay,
So, but how about Mike?
No,
Oh, okay,
I'm good.
all right.
thanks, good, good, good.
All set.
I don't have any
So,
comments.
okay, so we're commentless. Sounds like before we can this is the final submission, before we can finally approve it and sign the drawings and stuff, we're gonna have to come back next time for that purpose, but.
Yes, yeah, oh, so I had a question. So I was wondering, do you do in a lot of municipalities, and sorry, I'm not down here as much, typically you can do the vote with a condition that Acorn signs off on the plan revisions, and then we wouldn't bring you a plan to sign until that happened. I don't know what your preferences are or how you do things here, so. You don't have really full agendas, so it's not like.
No, that's
Yeah.
true. What we usually do is that the drawings are sitting over there.
Okay, yep, yep. So,
Waiting to get signed.
Yeah.
But
'Cause a lot of
why don't we
times-
at least go through and find out if we have any public hearing comments first.
Yeah.
So why don't we open the hearing? So anybody from the public wish to hear?
The only public.
Okay.
Oh, no,
In present.
there's Zoom.
Right.
Okay, any Zoom hands? raised?
Two attendees, but no hands raised.
You
Two
want to do?
attendees and no,
said, I already spoke to him, so I know I'm the only public.
oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Nope, that's quite all right. Okay, after that conversation, which by the way sounded like it was code.
Would you give your
And I
name-
have
name and
followed.
address, please, to the mic?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Would
Name
you
and address to the
identify
microphone.
yourself?
Oh, Eileen Lang, and I'm in a butter, and I got the notice yesterday rather. And I'm concerned about the flooding issue with these pieces because I have over 900 feet of an abutters line that's between us, between this and myself. So it's a whole lot. And I know that this piece is extraordinarily wet, and I've been there for 35 years. So I've been watching, and there's just been some things that I'm curious about. But you took it to a level that I don't know what the heck you guys were talking about with the buffers and stuff, which are all concerns for me. Because I have Moose Rocks Road. I was there when it was only before it was a road, and it was just, I had a driveway going out. This was a very old, it was called Old Wood Road. Anyway, just the road going in for the very first house has impacted my property so significantly where I flood. It was not even close to the wet that is on this property. And when I had built my house, there was only one knoll that was there that I could build on out of 5+ acres, which it sits on. So that puts me very close to the line on the south side of the property. So I'm concerned about flooding there. I don't know what the elevations are going to be. I'm hearing that what I believe, I think, for what I heard, that there was conservation land that's on your, because I got a copy of it, called conservation land, but that's actually going to be filled? No? That's not the stuff? Okay. I was sitting in the back last week, or 2 weeks ago, and I thought that the gray hash, the dark gray hash, was the filled portion of it on here? No? Well, I'm just clarifying. It's what? It's protected? So where is the fill then going? And do I have to worry about elevation of having water come back on my land?
Can you show us on this
Yeah, there's a
map
map
where
in the
you're,
front.
where you're at and where your concern is?
My house is right here.
Could you take the microphone, please?
Microphone, carry the microphone with you.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
thank you.
Okay, got it. Now I feel like an entertainer. All right, so my house is right in here,
Okay.
right in that part. And it's not far off of my setback because, as I said, it's on a knoll and there's wetlands behind me. Wetlands are everywhere. Vernal pools, there's a vernal pool, which I see now is being called an ice pond, and that was not known to me, and I researched those deeds going back to the 1700s. That was never an ice pond. That was just a plain old vernal pool. And Mr. Murphy came to visit me one day, quite a while ago, before he sold it, before actually Jonathan purchased the property. And it was a Sunday morning, about 8 o'clock in the morning, and he was there with his wife, and I kind of rushed out after I got out of my pajamas. And I said, "Hi, you must be the Murphys," because who's going to be standing at the end of my driveway looking at this property in front of me? And his first remark was that I dug this pond. And my response to him was, "Well, I'm Eileen Lang, it's nice to meet you, and I don't usually spend my money on other people's property." That has always been there. I know Lee Clough, who was the only house that was there at the time when I built. So this, calling it an ice pond, it's just not so, to change it. So my concern is that the houses within the 200, isn't it 250 feet that you have to be away from a vernal pool?
No.
How,
No,
what's the
there's
distance?
There's no distance that you're required to be away from it. There's a 250-foot zone of influence around a significant vernal pool, one that has been found to have met the criteria by the DEP. 40 wood frog egg masses in one place at one time through April and May of the year, the counting period, and 20 spotted salamander or blue spotted salamander masses. The presence of a single egg mass or the proof that it's used by an amphibian is not enough to cause significance per the DEP standard. Okay, so this particular entity that Ms. Lang refers to, I believe, is a man-made pond. Whether it's an ice pond, I believe back in the day, we were cutting ice out of all ponds back before the 30s and before we had refrigeration. So whether it's wrongly identified as an ice pond, it was a man-made pond, clear, again, by the steep sides, castings around the edges and so forth. Ms. Lang's house, I believe, is going to be over 300 feet to the nearest of any of Mr. Trudeau's constructs, just for the board's edification. It's at least three. I'm looking at an air photo that has Ms. Lang's dwelling and the proximity to that common property line. And due to buffers, setbacks, and so forth, the nearest dwelling John's going to be able to construct that's proposed on Jason's plan, I believe, is in excess of 300 feet.
Could I interrupt for just a moment? I'm losing the bubble here. You started by talking about a concern for flooding.
The flooding.
And let me finish. And now, have we left that topic and we've gone on to you have a concern that there's a vernal pool that is not identified, or?
It's all a part of the same where this is very, very wet. This is.
We need you on the mic for transcription purposes.
God, everybody tells me at home I'm loud. Anyway, that's all a part of where it's extraordinarily wet in front of me, is where the pond is.
You think that the pond and its treatment has something to do with the concern you have for
The
flooding?
water runs off the side of Moose Rocks Road and truly runs into where that pond is, and it has forever.
Okay.
It's just a natural thing. So it's been a catchment, but, I mean, even with.
So that your concern is solely for flooding of your property? That's what you're talking to?
My concern is about the ecology of the property because it has a lot of significance, but flooding is a big one because I'm suffering from the flooding just on Moose Rocks, and this is a wetter area in front of me. And I am on, as I said, I'm right on my bound line because there was no other place to put my house at the time. Between septic and water, you know, having a well. So yes, with the road coming in, I will now have a road that's coming up towards my house, pointing into the house.
And you want to be assured that your property is not going to be flooded?
Absolutely, because.
Okay, so
because
I wanted to give the developers
Okay.
something to address here. I understand, and we've had over the course of the sketch plan and the preliminary review and last week's, 2 weeks ago's meetings, a lot of discussions about what a lovely property this is. And I know that the developers work hard and closely also with the government agencies to tweak their plan and work on that general issue. But I think, you know, if you're coming with a more specific issue, perhaps there's a way that the applicant can help leverage the information that you have on stormwater analysis and the work that Acorn has done to address the concern that the abutting properties are not going to have stormwater runoff and be flooded. Would that address your concern?
That would absolutely help, and the fact that I don't know what these elevations are to, you know, when I heard about this fill.
I'm sorry. I thought you talked about fill, but then we said, no, that wasn't fill, that was protected area. So what fill are we talking about, and which elevations would you like to know about? And we'll get that information.
The
surfaced.
elevations for property, lot 3,
Can you look at the?
lot 5.
I'm hopeful that the information is there, but, you know, this is complex stuff for people that don't do it all the time.
Yes, so Jason Mathias, Land
Can-
Resource
can-
Consultants.
Can you borrow the
sure.
mic? Yep, thank you.
Yes, so,
Oh, I want you to make sure
Yeah,
he
you come on
knows
up, look.
what
so
elevations you're
your house is
interested in.
right about here, right?
My
Oh,
house is over here.
Okay,
My driveway comes in.
yep. So do you see these dark hatch areas? So those are no cut, no disturb buffers. So, oh, yeah, yep, I see it. So the elevation of your house up here is about 76, right?
I saw that.
Yep.
Looks about 6 feet higher
Yep.
than all the land around it.
Yes, and so our elevations down here where this house will be built is 66. So that's 10 feet. Up here, it is 68 to 66 through here. So you sit quite a bit higher. than
And
the rest
Jason,
of
the
us.
road that she's concerned about.
Yep, and this road here, all of this whole area, everything we have actually drains away from your property. Your property drains onto our property. And so all of our culverts under the road, we actually oversized to ease people's concerns about. My guess is, and I've actually never driven on your road, but when someone built a road and built extra, you might have an undersized culvert or something that can't handle a lot of the rainwater sometimes. And so you're gonna see ponding that you wouldn't normally see after someone installed a culvert that was undersized. Almost 95% of, typically we find abutter drainage complaints are because of undersized culverts.
You're absolutely
And
correct,
Moose
but
Rocks Road, which was never designed by an engineer.
Right.
Right.
That's the
Right.
point, that it was a road that never got a town.
Microphones, please.
Yep.
In the
So-
future, let's make sure that only one person is speaking, whoever has the microphone. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So, planning boards always look at me a little weird when I say this, but a lot of the times, when we come in and we engineer a project, we actually help abutting drainage issues because we end up increasing the hydraulic capacity of the natural features. We oversize culverts. We make it so water gets through quicker than it would normally be. I know it seems counterintuitive, but that's typically been our experience when we go back and look at things. But I can 100% say on my license and 20 years of experience, you will not be negatively affected by this project in terms of stormwater runoff, drainage, those types of things.
So even for the road. Closer to that thing. Even for the road that's going in right here, the elevation, when this is all brought up higher, between, say, 68 and 78 is not that big of a deal. I can't see them, sorry, I don't have glasses.
So it's only 72.
It's 72.
So you're still 4 feet.
Oh, so this is actually done to what the elevation will be in the end? Well, that answered it right there.
yeah.
Okay, that was it. I just didn't know how to
Beautiful.
read it. The second thing is, can I ask another question?
Sure.
Where will the utilities come in? The CMP?
Microphone, please.
Microphone.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
You need to give him the microphone. if that's what we're gonna do.
Well, be on poles, just like any other road.
Right,
Yeah.
are you coming up
It'll follow our road.
your roads?
Yep, yeah, and then it'll drop in and go underground to each house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it should be
okay.
as little impact.
Just to go back to Ms. Lang's point about the nearness of her house to her property line, I scaled it on my map. It looks about 50 or 60 feet to the lot line.
55.
Okay, so it's not right on the lot line. It's in excess of what the minimum setback is for that sideline.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. Any other?
50 to 60.
May I just check my notes to see if there was any other questions? But these were very good answers. I mean, honestly, these were just, I came to all the meetings, but I'm in the back. You can't see what you're talking about, and,
And it's highly technical material, so thanks, guys, for
all right, let me see.
the patience.
Now, which road is this extra 65 feet added to then?
The new road.
There's the main road and there's the Acorn. Oh, the other one, the main one. Okey dokey. I think I think you answered all of my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay. So, are there any questions on, no? No Zoom questions? Okay, so it would,
Excuse me, can I make a request with Jonathan? I apologize, really, I look like a scatterbrain. Here's my request. Could there be some vegetation around the cul-de-sac? Just, you know, like arborvitae's, something like that?
Why don't we talk about, or when we see where the cul-de-sac is, and see what the view line is, we'll address it then,
Sounds like a plan.
because I can do that.
And I'm not going anywhere, and I know where you are.
You know where I live?
Yeah, I do. Here, across the road.
okay. So,
Thank you.
so I believe that you'll be bringing us drawings to sign next time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll
If
have the
that's-
finding of facts next time?
And we'll probably have a finding of facts that, and we'll let,
Close the
well,
public
assuming
hearing.
we,
But
Approve.
Is there any appetite for approving this conditionally on closing out the Acorn comments? Larry,
We ought to close the public hearing.
Well, are we gonna close the public hearing first?
yeah, well,
first, okay.
well,
Yes.
only if we're done with the public hearing, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's close the public hearing now.
Very good.
Okay.
Proceed with your
So-
question.
Now let me ask my question of Larry is, do you have an appetite for,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's nothing major, but there's just some details.
so I would move that we approve this application condition on closing out the Acorn comments and
And the
present,
updated-
presenting the update
Yeah.
of that with the drawings for signature at the next meeting.
Yeah, the updated drawings for us to sign.
Yes.
Yeah,
Have all the
What
waivers?
what he said.
We have to officially approve the waiver again. We approved it for the preliminary plan. We
Preliminary.
have to
Good point.
approve it. So,
And I suggest we don't all need new packets mailed out to us. I think we're okay.
Correct.
no, what I'll do is email Acorn directly,
That'll
copy
live.
Galen.
That'll work.
And then if we could maybe check with them that I'll probably have this early next week, but I wouldn't want them to come back, let's say, Tuesday
days
or Wednesday before the next meeting and say, oh, there's the other two things, and then
No.
we have to recycle this process again.
Yep. Yeah, they usually need about a week to process
Okay.
a plan.
okay.
okay, so, Let it-
So Ed moved to approve,
well, first he has to move to approve the waiver. Is that what you did?
I did not. I had forgotten the waiver. Nina reminded me.
Okay, well, let's,
I'll make a motion to approve the waiver,
I would second that.
and for clarification, the waiver is on,
the length of the road.
on the length of the road.
Yeah.
To be slightly over the 1,000-foot limit.
So, your Ed approved,
Approve?
Approved.
approve,
Approved.
and Mike approves, okay. So, the waiver is approved. Now, Ed, if you want to approve the,
Again, I would move that we would accept this application as
approved.
being, we would approve it conditionally on satisfying that the Acorn comments have been resolved and the plans, drawings and comments updated as a result and available for signature at the next opportunity.
Okay, I'll second that.
All right, so, Ed,
Yes, approve.
Approved.
approved.
approve.
Approved.
Okay. So, we're basically all set.
Yep, thank you very
And
much.
you bring that, you get the final Acorn comments and the updated drawings, ideally at our next meeting, and then we can just sign them there.
Sure.
Yeah, so to all of us, we can take a electronic version that will be sent to the town and then distributed to us.
Right.
with any of that. Electronic's
I don't-
good, and an updated
Not that I
set.
don't love the paper, but.
Yeah, then the updated set of drawings for us to sign on the day
Yes.
in 2 weeks or whenever.
And findings of
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
What's that?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Thanks,
time
all.
and your patience.
Appreciate it.
Now,
The job will work.
Galen, you had some old business on a couple of.
Yes,
minor
I do have some other business for you. We received 2 inquiries for a minor site plan approval process. And so I need guidance from the planning board, how you've handled these type of requests in the past. One of these is a cosmetic change to an existing site plan. So in the findings of facts, they wanted to put a stone veneer on the wall. And instead, they don't want to do it because of the cost effectiveness of the project. So I need guidance if you want a full application for that, or if you would like it just to be presented as other business. I don't know how you've dealt with this in the past. Your land use ordinance is not clear on this.
Are these applications we've dealt with before?
Yes.
Okay.
The St. Anne's?
It sounds like St.
They're
Anne's.
non-conforming?
Could we wait until? Okay, sorry.
They're non-conforming
Uh,
lots?
No, it doesn't make any, it doesn't impact any of the non-conformance.
Are
It
they
doesn't,
parts of subdivisions?
they're part of a site plan application.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
The other one is an existing structure. They again got site plan approval. It's in the floodplain. Instead, they're doing the base flood elevation. They're going an additional 2 feet because they saw the evidence of the storms. They just want to, again, they're not changing anything. They're just moving it up, but it's staying within your zoning for height restrictions.
So
It's-
making
it's
it
in
more
compliance.
compliant.
Right. But technically, it's deviating from the
Right.
site plan.
Oh my
We would consider that in most cases, it's called a minor
Yeah.
subdivision
It's not
amendment.
subdivision, no.
Not a subdivision.
Sorry, a minor site plan amendment. And so the problem is your land use ordinance has been quiet on this, and I don't know what you guys have done in the past. So I need direction, how you'd like to proceed, but in the future, we probably should put something in your, what you'd like to see, a full plan, or what would you like to see as just either an update or,
I'm confused about this. If it was part of a subdivision,
a site plan, sorry.
a site plan,
It's a site plan.
Was not a subdivision.
It's not a subdivision, sorry.
So
but it was
they
a
were
site
putting in a
plan and
wall.
we dealt with it before?
Yes.
Why
Nina-
was it before the planning board at that time?
Well, you.
Resource protection areas.
Right, it's a resource protection area for the floodplain.
Ah, okay.
The other
all
And they
right,
were
that
putting up a
makes-
seawall,
Yeah,
and
the
they
other one was in the
decided,
coastal area as well, so that's,
Oh, okay. I was wondering why we got that.
no, it's okay. Yep.
so they put in, they want to put in a seawall, but they realized it really does need to be higher. And at the time, the board observed, wow, really could be higher.
Well, hang
So
on.
there's two.
There's 2 items.
And the other one is,
One's a seawall.
Let's take them one at a time.
One's a seawall that's cosmetic in nature.
Okay, let's talk about that one first. Okay, so is this the St. Anne's one?
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't
Okay,
wanna
This
go-
doesn't surprise me because I actually warned them about this.
we all did.
So, yeah, they got unanimous warning about it. So, I don't know, I mean, it's not going to be as pretty. It's gonna be a lot, it's gonna reduce the maintenance requirements a lot because the fascia, the stone facing would definitely, not last through 2 or 3 storms, so. I don't know, are they gonna do anything? Are they just gonna leave it exposed concrete?
Yep.
La-
So,
Larry, let's ask ourselves the question, would we have dealt with the application any differently, given that change?
I don't
Given that we did discuss
I
it.
don't think so.
I don't think so
It
either.
was gonna get approved.
This is a cosmetic change.
Yep.
Did we happen to capture in the findings that it was going to be crosshatched or whatever? Is it?
I think the findings do mention that there was gonna be stone,
yes, it does.
facing, but I don't, but that's strictly
That's,
superficial. I mean,
Well,
the retaining wall is,
What we've done,
I don't-
I mean, I seem to recall at least once changing a finding of facts afterwards by just bringing it back to the board, just with, this is a revision, minor revision we're making to the finding of facts. Still has to come to the board.
And then it would have to be refiled by them.
It would have to
Do
be
you notify the
re-recorded.
abutters?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Do you notify the abutters?
No, we're not talking about having a review of this. We're talking about,
That's why I need guidance, because
Oh, I hear you, I
land
hear
use
you.
ordinance is not clear.
I think you do need to notify the abutters on the seawall for sure.
What if it were a different issue? What if it were a house that were being raised up by 2 feet, but then they decided they were gonna raise it up by 3 feet, but it would still be within the height restriction?
Then you still need to notify the abutters
Still
because
need
it
to
affects
notify the
their view.
abutters.
It could affect their view.
That's correct.
Lee J, do you have any guidance on this? I'd have to look at the ordinance. Yeah, it doesn't, they don't have a minor revision
No.
section.
Well, I think,
We have it in the subdivision rules,
Yeah, but that's not, in the
but we could use that as a guideline
I-
for the land use ordinance.
again, I don't know what you have done in the past.
I think you have to, because if an abutter all of a sudden complained that all of a sudden that wall is 2 feet higher than you said it was gonna be,
but
it
wait,
would
wait.
come
but
back.
We just jumped to a wall being higher.
Sorry.
The wall, the elevation of the wall is not changing. It's only the face of the wall.
Yes.
Okay, it's only the stone.
okay.
Okay, the walls, the elevation changes the next one. It's the house.
Got it.
So in this case, the seawall, all that's gonna happen is they're not gonna spend
Have the
money
stone
putting.
facing.
It was gonna get worn off in a few years anyway.
bet.
It wouldn't make it through one storm.
Look
So-
like hell.
So and that could be, that will definitely be less attractive. Let me.
Well, I don't know, it might be more attractive in some people's
Yeah.
eyes. It will definitely look
Yeah.
differently.
So I say in the finding of facts, the reinforced concrete seawall will include a stone veneer to give it the appearance of a masonry seawall. A portion of the seawall will have riprap placed seaward of the wall. That's all I say.
Yeah, so it definitely would have to change that finding of facts.
And, Tom, I agree with you. I think this is one that could be handled with a markup and bring to the board, and we would change it, and they would
Yeah.
have to refile it. I don't think we need a public hearing on it, or a notification of abutters. It's not something that really was material to our approving
No.
the application.
No.
We would have gone through and approved it if it had been just a regular retaining wall.
Absolutely.
without it.
This is truly minor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an errata.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So the only question I have is, do they want to paint the exterior surface of the seawall? Or are they just going to leave it concrete?
I can't answer that, but I can have them on your agenda at the next meeting if you'd like.
why do you care?
Well, gray concrete is very unattractive, I mean,
I can tag it.
I don't know, I mean,
Ask the Soviet
I don't know if any of the abutters care about that. In fact, I've been out there several times, of course. The only thing that's gonna see the seawall is the ocean, so that's not gonna matter. We would approve this with or without the veneer, I think, yeah,
So I think this one we should treat as a
yeah.
errata, and if you could have them propose, or Galen, even if you bring us a markup
Yep.
of the findings, we
Yeah.
could deal with that at the next meeting.
Yeah, so this is just gonna be a refiling of amended findings.
Right.
Right.
It'd be an old business.
And who's
Yep.
gonna revise the findings?
You.
Me?
No, we'll have the applicant do it.
Well, we wrote the findings,
Okay.
so, yeah,
Just
okay, it might be a good idea for him to mark out.
To
just-
propose,
Must
to
delete.
propose a
Yep.
change
So
that we
that
would
we
approve.
can-
Propose a markup and.
So we can get it right.
initial it.
Yeah, if
Yep.
you would do that, in the next couple of days, and we could modify the findings for approval at the next meeting.
Yep, I can do that.
Okay,
While we're talking about this, you clearly could have a change that wasn't captured in the findings, that was of this same ilk.
yeah,
That it was just something they'd said we were gonna do one way and wasn't done another way. To me, that would just be handled by the code enforcement office. It's really only because it's in the documented package that
Yes.
we approve that
yes,
it's coming back to us.
Good
Right.
point.
Okay.
Yeah.
For
that's
this
what it
one.
sounds like.
No,
So what about the second one?
second.
Okay,
Yeah.
second one is, again, this is a house that went through site plan approval process.
Yep,
21 Norwood Drive. Is
yep, I
Oh,
remember this
yeah.
one.
Yep. So again, they're just increasing it by 2 feet for the
Yeah.
base flood elevation because of the recent storms. They just really think that would be a prudent measure to.
They're gonna change the height.
We actually mentioned this.
I think this is
Just
one
point out,
that, as George was saying, this might be of interest to the abutters, and,
This
be,
would be of interest to the abutters because of the view, and that one, you really do need to notify abutters
And the
of
total
that
height.
I
change.
think,
Even if it's under your height
Yeah.
requirements.
well,
it's still-
because it could affect the sight lines for some of the abutters. I mean, it could have a visual impact in the area.
but in fairness, we're not we wouldn't say no on that basis, but there might be
That's right.
some argument that's raised that we can't anticipate.
It could arouse, public comments, yeah.
And if it didn't meet the height restrictions, then we would have to basically not approve it.
But it does.
Well,
Well,
He's already
we'll,
said-
s-
he's
we'll
already
see
said-
whether
Right,
it
it's gonna
does.
be-
We
yeah.
have to have the plan in front of us. But we have to have enough of a plan to look at, and the abutters have to have enough of a plan to look at to see
Yeah.
if it changes their view.
yeah,
I think the difference is the first one is cosmetic. It could be clabbers versus, shakes. In the second case, though, it's structural.
Yeah.
And it's height, and the board and everybody else needs to take a look at that.
Right, and height is a particular sensitivity in that area.
You bet.
So just get your minds thinking about in the future for a possible revision to the land use ordinance, how you'd want to handle minor, because this isn't going to be the first time it happens.
Yeah.
And I'd hate to go to them and say, oh, you need to go ask the planning board first, and then
I'm
Yeah.
2
sure
weeks later.
so
there's
hang
other
on, so
people.
before we leave 21 Norwood though, so are we gonna start over with the preliminary and a final and
That's
public
my
hearing both times?
question.
Wait,
Or we-
no, it's a site plan, it's not,
It's not
not a
subdivision.
subdivision.
It's a
I
site
know.
plan.
So
they
we're
have
gonna
to-
just go straight, they're gonna resubmit their final application, so what is what you're saying, with this revision? Is that
And
right?
yes, you probably, because of the abutters, you probably need a public hearing.
public-
That- I
Yeah, public-
think that's
public
what
hearing.
you're thinking
Yes,
about.
yeah, sorry,
So
yeah,
it'd be
okay. So they'll submit an application.
It
we'll have
sounds
a
like
meeting,
it-
Then the second, then we'll
This
have
is an initial review,
initial review.
yeah,
Yeah, okay.
of a
All right,
change.
have a
right,
change, all
and we'd say it's complete, and then have the public hearing 2 weeks
Yeah,
later.
okay, all right.
That's what I would do.
Okay.
Okay,
So are there, you said other municipalities have a definition for minor?
yeah, they
Can
have
you
some
give us a
sort of,
couple of those and
Yep.
we'll work from those instead of creating from scratch?
We probably ought to add to the land use.
So let's just go back for just a second, just a thought experiment. If 21 Norwood existed today in the form that we just approved, they went ahead and they built it, and now, 2 years later, they've decided, gosh, the storms are pretty bad. I want to raise it up, did you say 2 feet?
2 feet.
That's all we're gonna do. What would they do?
It would come before.
It would come before the board, because it's a change to a non-conforming, on a non-conforming lot. I think that's all we got here.
Yeah.
It's-
Well, the only question I have on this one is 2 feet enough? Because
Oh, all right. All the more reason to have
Are you-
a discussion.
Are you sure you only want to raise it 2 feet?
There's
Because
my
it's still gonna
professional
be low.
engineer.
They're voluntarily going 2 feet higher than what the
I
federal.
know,
standards-
I remember this one.
Yep.
Maybe
Could
you
you
want to
just double-
suggest they take out a floor and go 4 or 5 feet.
But I'm just saying-
Put in a stone
I'm just
veneer.
saying, just double check, please, that
All right,
you only want to raise it 2 feet.
Okay.
But we'll look forward to the,
Yes, thank you for the
to the
direction.
submission.
Okay.
Well, the only reason I came back to that, Galen, was just, trying to take in what you're saying is, how could have you predicted in advance what the board was gonna say when you put those two?
No, I told
Questions to it, so I-
both people, I said, I'm gonna go to the board.
Well, no, but have we discussed it in such a way that maybe you would say, well, wait a minute, this is how the board thought about those. The first one was, if somebody came to me the first time and said, gee, I have this property and I'm gonna go put some etching on the outside, or I'm gonna take out some etching on my stone wall, would that go to the planning board? And I think the answer would be the planning board wouldn't care.
Cosmetic.
But it's in the
But-
findings of facts, that's,
Got into the.
But it's in the finding of
That's
facts, so let's go find a way to clean that up as expeditiously as possible.
Let's not put it in the findings of fact.
And maybe we haven't done that, maybe it's not, maybe it could be made more efficient, but that's what we're trying to do there is.
And in the other one, if they were gonna come and jack it up 2 feet, it would have to come here anyway.
Yeah.
Because it's a non-conforming structure
Right,
on a
right.
non-conforming lot.
Yeah, that's how I'm
Yeah,
thinking about it.
that's good logic.
okay, that's all I have for other business.
To
Okay.
your nomenclature, good questions, Galen.
Yes.
Good questions.
Who knew a planning
There's
board to be
supposed to be
short-sighted?
something for training.
Yes, there is, that's under your new
I wonder
business.
if
Oh.
there is case law on that.
So we're doing new business still? I have an item that I wanted to bring
okay.
up. Could
Other
we do that? I got asked at a select board meeting about a month ago now, 3 weeks ago, to provide support, to provide planning board support to the effort to capture amendments to our land use ordinance, to create and capture amendments for LD 2003. And we had a little bit of a discussion back and forth here, but I wanted to know what the board thought about whether and to what degree, if the board wanted to be involved with working with the growth committee to create these amendments. There's work going on still toward the November election to finish the amendments for the 3 different silos of change that'll be required. Just wanted to feel the board out on that, and should we be involved at all?
I think we've already been involved in the meeting that we had last night. And my understanding is the changes with the growth committee are going to go to the town attorney at this point, who's going to clean up the language.
Yep.
And the board has already had some input on it. And I think the growth committee knows what their feelings are, and I think we have a pretty good handle on it. I don't see why we need extra meetings with the growth committee to put any more into it at this point. I'd rather wait until the language came back through the Board of Selectmen that's going to go forward. Then if we had a question, we could bring it up.
Anybody else?
That sounds fair. I mean, my only thought is where we left it last time, I thought is less is more. You know, address what is required and not try to do other stuff, which
Right.
was where they
So
were.
what I'm sensing is that the board wants to be in a position of critiquing the result and
It sounds like it's already at the attorney's, so.
well, not at all, not at all. Only the first first third of the changes have been proposed and are going to the attorney. The changes that have to do for affordable housing and the multiple homes on lots have yet to be created. Only the ADU language really is in this first package.
No, the affordable housing is also brought forward. The only bucket that we didn't touch was the 2 to 4.
The 2 to 4 with the density bonus, right?
The density bonus was sent forward. That's the affordable housing
Oh,
density
okay.
bonus.
All right,
Yep.
so it's the 2 to 4.
The 2 to 4 was allowing for 2 dwelling units on a vacant lot outside of your growth areas, basically anywhere in town, and then anywhere in your growth areas, you're allowed up to 4 units of vacant. And then if you have a single family dwelling, and you can have up to 2 additional, so making a total of 3 on one parcel, anywhere in the town.
Yeah, but that was addressing specifically what the state
Yep.
new law requirement was.
Correct.
It wasn't this other additional piece that we heard about stormwater management survey for
Yes, that's for the accessory apartment. That's the performance standards for accessory apartments.
Yeah, that is above and beyond what was
Yep.
required by the state. Is that going forward?
That is, yep. That's being considered by the Board of Selectmen.
So my perception on that whole bill was that as long as the existing land use ordinance requirements are met, it's difficult to argue with any of those things, but in many cases, applying the existing land use ordinance is going to, reduce the amount of construction that could occur according to the LD 2003. So I guess my point is that for this to really go ahead sort of citywide or townwide, some adjustment of the land use ordinance could be required, and in that case, we probably want to be involved make sure that we can understand what they're doing. But I'm also sort of like Mike, I'm not sure I want to get too far down the road on this unless they're going to change the land use ordinance. I guess that's
They are changing the land use ordinance.
well, So it'd be nice to keep abreast of what the proposal is.
Yeah, I think after last night's presentation, the part that's really going to be impacting the planning board is when subdivision review for the affordable housing developments, if they were to come forward with the density bonus. That's really where the changes really will impact the planning board for review.
But that's a direct response to the
Yep.
new requirement.
Yep.
So that is what it is. We can't change poor wording in legislation. We just have to adopt that pretty much as is. The part that got me a bit concerned was where we were treating or putting an additional requirement on for stormwater management survey and plans, I believe it was, for an ADU, but not for an extension of my house.
So the one meeting that I was invited to and went to as a citizen, but as a planning board member, we did talk about that, and I brought forward that concern, and as a result, the language was simplified. Okay. However, it is unique to ADUs right now that scrutiny will be given for stormwater runoff on ADUs that is not required by the land use ordinance for if I go put a new garage on or an addition to my house. And I do think it's problematic, but it was just me, guys.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you going. And, but if that's where it is and it's been done and approved and it's gone to the next stage, which the lawyers have it, I'm not sure what additional influence that we could have at this point.
Okay.
We can comment when it comes out on the other side again.
Well, apparently there's going to be a public forum
Yeah,
on it at some point.
maybe that's our next.
I know the select board, you giving them another presentation tomorrow? Somebody's doing a
I
presentation on it
think it's
tomorrow.
it's on their agenda as.
As a
here's-
continuing?
Yeah. here's-
So at some point, there'll be a public meeting
Yeah.
on it, looking for public input, but,
The things
We'll look
that-
forward to
that-
that.
From last night, I thought that the subreg is gonna have to change. How we deal with subdivisions.
Yep, it's the same process. Nothing changed.
yeah, again, I wasn't present during the discussions and the
Well, no,
crafting of the language on the affordable
Nothing changed,
density bonus.
but we have, when the housing trust came in front of us, okay, we got into details of how they fund it, who does what, that never shows up in anything else. And they walked us through it very nicely, but I think it might find its way into the subreg somehow also.
No, I thought it was a good conversation last night for those members that were able to attend. And I do think there's going to probably be a follow-up. Maybe we will reach out to Maine Housing to see if they could help educate us more on affordable housing developments as it relates to especially the home buyer programs. The rental program's a little bit easier when it's, a developer and they have that deed restriction, they can't sell them. But when you have transactions that are constantly going, I think from a public education perspective, I think it would be helpful to have that discussion with Maine Housing to explain their different programs and how they work.
I think the second, second housing trust thing is ownership instead of
Yep.
leasing. So it was, we already went through it once.
And I guess, to me, that was educational curiosity type thing, but didn't really impact me as a board member here on how they're gonna finance this or do it going forward.
That's true.
I mean, they put it in the deed or they do that, that's how they're gonna manage it and make sure it works going forward. I'm more worried about, are we following the requirements in the construction and the building? The
Right.
other is a personal interest.
These are issues that we don't usually handle, that the code enforcement office handles.
Yep.
Right, it's just, we've, on a number of occasions, had some back and forth here about gosh, here come these amendments to the land use ordinance for a variety of issues, and gee, it sure would be nicer if, since these are gonna affect planning, if they'd come to the planning board earlier. And what I'm gathering here, though, is that the majority of the board likes it that way. We don't wanna get involved in making the sausage.
I prefer not.
No.
Other towns, the planning board actually does the planning.
No, there's no planning on this planning board.
That's why we created the growth planning committee. But Ed, you're more
that's
than
right.
welcome to join us. We're always willing to have that feedback from a planning board perspective, because I think that it did help enrich the
Well, I
conversation.
got some feedback from other members of the board that they didn't really want me representing the planning board unless the planning board said they wanted a representative there.
Well, that's basically something that's very important, in that you can't, a member of the planning board just can't stand up without the authority of the whole board, basically, or the chairman, and say, I represent the planning board on this. You don't want that to happen. It can lead to a lot of issues down the road, legal issues. I think we have had more input on this than we have had on a lot of other things that have come to us for changes of the land use ordinance. And I think last night we got to put in some input on it, and our understanding is that it is going to happen. Certain things are going to go in there because they are state mandated, basically. And I don't foresee another meeting with the Growth Planning Committee, which is charged with putting this language together, for us to do a final review on, which we probably will. We'll see it the same time the public sees it. And we can bring it up as an issue, but I don't see any reason for us to meet again to start working on the language with them. Then we become the Growth Planning Committee as well as the Planning Committee at this point.
Well, there was, again, at the select board, the reason I went is that I was asked to go represent the planning board. I think it was by Laurie, and somebody said, well, that's the way we used to do it. But I don't want to go do that as an individual without the support of the planning board. So that's why I'm bringing it up
Well,
here.
there's two ways this would work. It'd be one of our members or all of us go to the Growth Planning Commission to give input. The other way it works is a member of the Growth Planning Commission, planning group comes here and gets our feedback.
Right.
Well, we can
both of
also
those work.
designate somebody to
Yeah.
go to the Growth Planning Committee.
But-
The board can designate
Right,
somebody to
right,
go to the
yeah.
Board of Selectmen.
So we can either go that way or they can come this way. Both are acceptable ones. It's all it is getting viewpoint information, data in to make a decision. So it can either, we designate a person and agree that that person can speak for us at theirs, or they can send a person here to get our feedback and take it back to the board.
And so as Lori mentioned, what was done in the past was the planning board designated one of their own to go to the growth planning. Since you all are very busy with applications that come before you, and it's going to be soon the beginning of construction season, I don't think it makes sense to bog you all down with
Right.
constant discussion and extending your discussion time past 8 o'clock. So if you want to designate someone, that's your prerogative. But that's just what, again, the town manager explained to us of what was done in the past.
Been here for a couple of years. I don't recall anyone ever doing that. Have we ever done that?
I've been on the planning board for 9 years and it's never happened.
Yeah. So I'm not sure where Laurie got
Okay.
that idea.
Well, my interest on this topic specifically would be to have a chance to review proposed changes to the land use ordinance before they were enacted. That's really my only interest in this, and then I'll just wait for,
Yeah,
the
I think
experts
our
to tell
problem in
us.
the past has been that the selectmen come up with a change to the land use ordinance, and it's already a done deal. They say, hey, we want you to have a public hearing on this. And oh, by the way, you can't change it.
Yeah, I'd like to see it before it gets
I
set
mean,
in rules.
And
That's my interest.
Our
not-
insight into it at that point, I think, is from a practical nature, because we have to go back and interpret it for the, these things that come before us. And they may not always look at it through that lens. If we could all attend together and got like judicial robes like the Supreme Court during the State of the Union address, that would be awesome.
Do we get money for it? Do I get a trailer or?
Yeah, right.
Mobile
One of us
home?
has to stay behind in case, you know,
Yeah,
the
right.
president.
Is there any other business from the board?
So are we leaving this now? How are we leaving this? We're not gonna be represented on the growth planning committee?
That seems to be what you.
But we are going to see the proposed changes before they're cast in concrete, please. That's
Yep.
my,
Maybe,
okay.
hopefully.
Yeah,
We want to see the sausage, we don't want to make it.
That's right.
Taste.
right
We will
now,
not eat this sausage.
you all have the most updated, the last night's packet that was handed out. That was the most recent revision that's in the attorney's laps. So whatever the attorneys revise at this point.
So
in
you
the
said
hands of the
was
lawyers.
handed out last night. If I was at another
Oh.
meeting last night,
I guess we'll have to send you a copy.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Could you
Sorry.
send me a copy as well? The latest electronic
was-
version?
I was
like
lodging.
electronic.
Yeah, send it out
I
to
think,
everybody.
I think April sent out that to all of
I believe
us
she did.
ahead of last night's meeting, including you, Mike.
Today?
Okay. So it hasn't been updated.
She didn't send out, I think, the part that was the presentation of the state representative.
Better yet, it's already on the town website under the Board of Selectmen meeting packet. For
Yeah.
last night, you'll see that there was a packet there and it'll be
Okay,
right there.
that'll be easy, yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Yep. Ready for new business?
Sure.
Okay. So as we discussed at your last meeting, we have a few members, a majority of the members that need training for the planning board training for MMA. So graciously, SMPDC has brought in Lee J to provide that presentation to the board.
Thought he looked familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Lee J to lead the discussion.
All right.
I knew there was going to be a handout.
I'm old school, I like paper.
Yeah. Makes it easy to make, yeah.
Well,
The chairman told
paper-wise,
me
you're in the
last
right
night it'll be a
place.
short meeting, there's only one thing on the agenda.
Don't believe the chairman.
I don't believe the chairman. The chairman told me last night there was only one thing on the agenda, it was gonna be a quick meeting.
Oh, yeah, well, what can I say?
I'll make it quick.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, check your elevations.
That's right.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, we do get robes.
Quasi,
Quasi.
quasi-judicial role.
I haven't seen something that's been Xeroxed 500 times in a while.
Have the mic in front of you.
Okay.
There we go. Good evening. You probably thought the last time I was here substituting till Galen got here was the last time you were ever gonna see me again. So, yeah, Galen, had asked me to come in, and this training, a lot of it is really about reminders, of what the board, needs to do and how you should operate, generally speaking. I'm not gonna tell you how to interpret your ordinances, but I will talk about, the process of an application. But first I want to start, right on the first page, what is the board's responsibilities? So the board, you folks actually act in two capacities. One is the quasi-judicial, and the other is the legislative. And what is the difference? So the difference is quasi-judicial is when you're reviewing an application like a subdivision, or a site plan. And what you need to do basically is operate within yourself as a person, not as a board. And that means, as it says here in this bullet list, don't talk or email about an application outside of the meeting, either to board members or the public. Try to be impartial as possible, concentrating only on whether the application meets the written standards, i.e. your ordinances. Only discuss waivers that you have the authority to give. Consistency in interpretation is important, but if you discover the past practice has been wrong, don't keep doing it. Excuse me, I'm gonna lose my voice. Consistency, let's see, popularity of the project. with the applicant is and whether you're personally like the applicant or the project are almost always irrelevant. Could be your best friend, but if there's issues with the application, make sure, that's right, there are issues. Your duty is to process the application as efficiently and as fairly as possible, sticking to the ordinance. And the only relevant public comment is with respect to whether the applicant meets the standards and whether the procedures and submissions are in order. So that's really on the development side. Now, the other side, which we were kind of just talking about, is with ordinance development, with zoning map changes, if there are any along those lines, and that's really your legislative mode. And that's where, don't be afraid to talk to people and get their opinions and their thoughts. Use your feelings and instincts about what's right for the future of the community and decide how the ordinances should come out. Consider changing the way things have always been done. Don't be afraid to change as long as you're within, the rules or the laws within the state of Maine. You can be an advocate for a particular change, and it's important to gather public input, as I mentioned, on how people feel about the rules and their vision of what should be allowed to encourage in the future. So you're playing two roles. Development projects, don't talk about it outside this room. Don't talk about it, and we'll get into it a little bit later, but with either members of the public, the applicant, or amongst yourselves, unless you're in this room in the public debate. And the legislative side is seek the input and find out from people what they're thinking before you enact new rules. Yes, Nina?
I think there's an issue that's left off of this under the quasi-judicial
Okay.
mode. And it's one that sometimes the public comments on. I hear public comments. And that is in terms of impartiality. And this comes up with lawyers a lot in small towns. Can you represent two people at the same time?
Sure.
Can you be impartial in a certain situation, especially if you're in a butter or something and you have a bad relationship? If you're in an organization and you're a board member of that organization and an issue comes up before the planning board, do you recuse yourself? Okay, these are hard ones, and they're hard ones to resolve, but I think they're ones that you need to address.
Absolutely. If the question really becomes in recusing yourself is, and we've got some stuff in the packet that talks a little bit about it, is there a conflict of interest? And what is a conflict of interest in the state of Maine, and how does that play out? But there's also the idea of perceived conflicts of interest. It may not be real, but it may be something that if you're really feeling concerned about it, you may want to say to the board, and this is how you can resolve it. You say to the board, here's my situation. I don't believe I have a conflict of interest, and I feel that I can participate and be very level-headed about how I want to vote on this application. And if the board, the chairman can go down the list of board members and see if how they feel. And if they feel you can judge that project on its merits and that there's no conflict, then you can participate. But if you're feeling like, I really don't even want to go down that road, I feel like, I've got some sort of a conflict here, then make that as an announcement, recuse yourself, come out, sit in the back of the room, so that you're not, making facial expressions to the board in a way that might influence them in any way, and let the board go about their business. Absolutely. Tom's looking puzzled, or thinking. No? Okay. The next page, and it's a couple of pages, talks about revisiting, or what is ex parte communications. Ex parte communications basically is, again, you having communications with folks outside this room, particularly on a development project, again, ordinances and zoning stuff, you're looking for people to participate. Ex parte communications really could even be to the extent of you're in the grocery store and an abutter sees you and stops and starts to talk to you about a project. Your first response should be, I really can't discuss that project with you unless it's in the public hearing situation. Thanks, have a nice day, I got shopping to do. I know I as a staff person in the community I live in and worked in for many, many years, it would take me 4 hours to go do food shopping. My frozen food was thawed out by the time I got home. But I'm a staff person. You as a voting board member need to really distance yourself from that. Or again, if that happens, you want to announce it in the meeting that, you know, so-and-so saw me in the grocery store and started having a conversation with me about the project. How do you feel, board members? Do you think I can still be impartial? But ex parte communication is a difficult one. You need to really stay away from it. It also is in relation to board members to board members. And I'll get into that as well next, I think. But don't email each other concerning a project. Don't have conversation amongst each other regarding a project. You really need to stay away from that. And there's good reason, because if it is that kind of a controversial project and you think it's going to go to court at some point, guess what the next thing is they're going to do? They're going to want, under right to know law, they're going to want all of your email. And they have a right to get it. And so then you're going to be sitting for hours going through your personal email, trying to find every conversation that you ever had regarding that project. So don't email folks, even amongst board members. Don't have conversation. It's best that it's just left in this room. So as I just mentioned, email and the right to know. I've given you a piece. It's fairly dated, but it has not changed at all. It's from the Maine Townsman, which is the MMA magazine. And it talks about, since most of our boards now have access to email, which, as we know, 1999, we were all just kind of learning what email was, right? Instead of the telephone to communicate with each other about upcoming business, is there anything we should be concerned about? And the answer is yes. Whether the communication is by email, by telephone, or is face-to-face, Maine's right to know law, 1 MRSA 401, prohibits the conduct of board business except at a public board meeting. I think you've already heard me say that. So I'm not going to read the whole thing here. It just regurgitates what I've just talked about, but it's really about not having communication even amongst board members outside this room on a particular development project. The next page is 30-A 2605, conflict of interest. About under number 4, about 2/3 of the way down, you'll actually see something that's highlighted there. And it says, when an official is deemed to have direct or indirect pecuniary interest, the vote on the question or the contract is not voidable and actionable if the official makes full disclosure of interest before any action taken, and if the official abstains from voting from the negotiation or award of the contract and from otherwise attempting to influence a decision in which the official has interest. The official discloses a notice of abstention from taking part in a decision in which the official has an interest shall be recorded with the clerk, secretary of municipal county government, or the quasi-municipal corporation. It's really the whole idea that, when does a conflict of interest become a conflict of interest? And I've got one project where that issue has come up recently because one of the board members' husbands, one of the board members is married to a real estate agent, and the real estate agent is probably going to be marketing these condo units in this development project. So the question was asked before the board meeting of all the board members to show impartiality, do you have any interest in this project? And so each one of them had to say, no, I do not, or yes, I do. The yes, I do is even if it's your husband, your wife, your partner, your soulmate, whoever that you're associated with, if they get any financial interests or benefits from that project, you should just stay away from it. Don't participate, so that you are not going to in any way taint any decisions that the board makes in the future on that project. I have included an interesting article from 2022, more recent, about that very situation up in Auburn. It played out in the papers quite a bit. The planning board member participated in a project that he ended up being the real estate agent on and should not have, although the what board is it that they call it? I don't think it's even mentioned in this article. Oh, the ethics panel. The ethics panel did a review in that town of whether or not the real estate agent had any conflict of interest there. I believe they ruled that he did not. But he since has been removed from the board because there was too much potential for conflict there. He was a real estate agent. He said, look, I think if you read the article, he said, look, there's a lot of projects in town. I don't know when they're going to approach me and ask me to take part in sales or leasing of these units. And the ethics committee for the town said, yeah, he's right. He doesn't know that. Whether he knew it behind the scenes that, they were going to approach him to market it, and so therefore they, quote unquote, bought a vote. No one knew for real what that was, but just really stay away from that if you can.
What about the abutter situation? Do you have to declare if you're an abutter on an application?
So let me ask it a different way. Is there a conflict of interest in that? No. Should you declare that you're an abutter? Yes. Absolutely. Doesn't mean you can't vote impartial. But again, I think it comes down to, Mr. Chairman, I want to announce that I am an abutter to this project. However, I feel I can review the project impartially and make an appropriate decision. And the chairman should, turn to the board members and, how do you feel?
What if you're in a butter and you feel that you could not rule impartially?
I would announce that and recuse yourself.
There you go.
So, Lee J., just for clarification purposes, if a person has a potential conflict of interest, they would make a statement to the chairman.
Yep.
Does the chairman make the decision that that person is removed, or is it the entire board?
The entire board.
They all have to vote
Yes.
to decide that person should remove themselves.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep.
Yep.
The next one, actually, it's interesting. A couple of years ago, probably 2-3 years ago maybe, I was approached by the staff here in town to try and develop, because I had never done that one before, but develop what we're calling the process within the agenda. It's really taking a development project from beginning to end. And I don't know whether this ever got in front of you folks, but I had put it together for you folks. And I've actually used it with some of the other workshops that I've done. But it's really about how do you get from the application first in front of you right through the process and motions and that sort of thing. It's interesting. Certainly, every board does things differently, and, it's not being critical in any way. I found it interesting tonight that on that subdivision plan that you again, at this final stage and at the end of the process, granted a waiver on the road length. The way I normally work with the boards that I always work with on a regular basis is that, and it kind of walks you right through this whole process, but, and I got it in my head, when a plan comes to the board for the very first time, I always make a recommendation to them as to what the waivers are, whether they should or should not waive certain things. It's only a recommendation. You as a board can make your own decisions. But waivers, in my estimation, should be done first. The reason I say that is because you shouldn't find the application complete until either they have to, if you don't agree on a waiver, then they have to submit that information to you. And without that information being submitted, the application is not complete. So you should not move forward on finding it complete and setting a date for a public hearing. For example, you should tell the applicant, go through the waiver process, tell the applicant that, well, we really need to see this stormwater plan before we can find the application complete. You know, move to table the application, send them away to do their job. That being said, where I draw a line is that if someone submits 2 pages and says, here's my stormwater plan, Larry, I say it's complete. Did they submit something from the checklist that says you need a stormwater plan? Yes, they did. Does it address your issues and your concerns? Probably not. So then it's, look, we need more information. You gave us what you needed to be a complete application, but we need more information. So I always try to play it that with the boards that I work with, that, well, they submitted something. Find the application complete, and if you need more information during the deliberations, ask for it.
And I think the waiver was brought up for the Glen in the beginning, because it was there in the preliminary letter, it was identified, so that was something that I think was identified by the applicant right in the beginning of, I need a waiver, and we always supported that. We asked
Sure.
the questions on the initial one.
Sure.
Right up, and it just is included all the way through from the preliminary to the final finding of facts that there was a waiver, the board approved it.
Sure, and I'm not being critical of you.
Yeah, but
I
I'm
mean, I
just,
heard it
yeah.
tonight, so I was like, that's kind of,
Yeah, but it's, that one I know has been there, it wasn't something new or a surprise to us.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, we've been working that for about a year now, I think, the Glen.
We, in effect, when we do the preliminary plan, we approve any waivers associated with the preliminary plan.
Correct.
But that, we've always treated that as a preliminary waiver, that the final waiver is made with the final plan.
Okay. See, and, well, the way I work with my boards is that once the waiver's granted, the waiver's granted, and that should happen at preliminary, and then when they come forward for final, their plans should be reflective of what was already discussed at preliminary.
Yeah.
It just makes it, in my estimation, it streamlines it and cleans it up a little bit, so that when they come forward for preliminary, if the application is complete, you find it complete, you do your site walk, you do your public hearing, then you can deliberate with the board. Once you get to the preliminary approval, you approve it with the waivers and everything. And then when they come back for final plan should really be pretty much, I hate using this word, but I'm gonna, pretty much a rubber stamp. There may be some things like you folks found and discussed tonight, with differences between notes on the plan and what really needs to happen because of DEP or something. I clearly, I think, the way you did it was good and appropriate tonight. Approve the final plan with the conditions that the plans not be signed or permits issued until everything has been corrected and cleaned up. It gets it off your plate, you know, and you've got other new business coming your way, so to really create a backlog can get painful on occasion. So you want to try to take care of that stuff and move it along as long as you can, is the way I do things. That doesn't mean it's 100% correct, but it's the way I've been operating for years with the boards that I work with. Let's see. So that's that piece. The last thing I'll leave you with, and certainly we can open it up for more conversation, discussions, questions, and whatnot, is this threefold piece of paper, which I kind of find interesting, but it's your errata sheet. You talked about an errata sheet tonight. It's your errata sheet on Robert's rules and what certain things are used for. When do you need a second? Is it a debatable issue or not? Votes needed to pass. Can it be reconsidered? There's a whole bunch of things in here. One of the things that I always, and after a while, some of the boards that I work with kind of look at me and go, is this a tabling action or is this a postponement? Because there is a difference, and it's explained in here. There is a difference between tabling an application and postponing an application. Is it a slight little gray area? Yes, but again, if it's a project that could become controversial, you want to just make sure that you're doing it the right way.
So, Lee J., would you like to explain the difference between table and postpone?
Sure. Table, it's right on the bottom of your sheet. But a tabling is used to lay a topic or a motion aside temporarily when something else is an immediate urgency has arisen or when something else is needed to address before consideration of the pending question is resumed. Postponement is used to put off within limits a pending question to a definite day, meeting, or hour until after a certain event. So usually, if you're in the middle of a process and normally you would say, we're going to table this application to the next meeting. It's actually, we're going to postpone any future action on this to the next meeting. That way it's to a date certain. A tabling doesn't have to be to a date certain. It can be tabled for a month, 2 months, 3 months, until you take it off the table when it comes back for further deliberation or action. Where postponement is where we're going to postpone anything on this until the next meeting or until the March 24th meeting or something to that effect when you have a date certain.
So, again, I've done Robert's Rules of Order training, parliamentary procedure.
Yep.
Normally how I understood it, because a lot of people have the misconception with tabling,
Yep.
is that they think of Congress, and when people table things in Congress, it basically puts it out indefinitely. Normally you would use the table provision at the meeting because you have to deal with another thing on the agenda, versus postpone is you're putting it out into the next meeting or
Sure.
3 meetings out.
You can do it
That's a
that
good
way as well.
clarification. Yep.
Absolutely. Yep. The other thing that's in here that we don't talk a lot about, but is, I think, fairly important to note is a reconsideration of an application. If you take action on an application at a meeting, and after the meeting, someone comes up to you and says, you missed this issue right here, and it's a very important issue, and you're thinking about it, and you say, well, that could really change my vote. I think, we really need to discuss this more. In this case, ask Galen or whoever sets your agenda, we need to have a reconsideration of that application put on the agenda. Does it come up? Maybe, maybe not. But if you're feeling that way, then if you voted in the opposition to the application, then you can make a reconsideration at the very next public meeting. It can't be beyond that. It can't be, 2 meetings down the road. It can't be 2 months down the road. It has to be at the very next meeting. You can make a motion to reconsider the application and bring it back up for discussion. Doesn't mean you may not change your mind, but bring it back up for discussion and say, I'm really feeling like we missed this information and I really would like to see more information. If the board feels that way, then you've opened that application back up. But it's only available to you for the very next public meeting that you have. I've seen it used a few times, and I've suggested to board members who have had conversation with me, let's put it on the agenda and let's put it out there for reconsideration. Sometimes a second never happens. Someone could make the motion for reconsideration, anybody can second it, and sometimes people don't. They'll just sit there and let it die.
What if you've already had a findings of fact signed and recorded at the registry?
It wouldn't matter, because if you made a reconsideration, if the vote or approval or denial changes, then you're gonna need to do new findings of fact anyway, and those will supersede the ones that were already recorded. Yep.
And Legia, I've never dealt with a reconsidered findings of facts, but if that were to occur, we would obviously put a statement somewhere up top that would
Absolutely.
say, hey, this was in
Yep.
relation to this findings of facts dated
Correct.
this date.
Correct. The findings of fact would, again, I'm not sure how you folks, I know you folks do your own, so I haven't really seen them. The way I do them is the notice of decision and findings of fact are on the same document, but they're two different things. And what I do is I don't take minutes, but I kind of tell the story of the application, meeting to meeting to meeting, and the issues that were discussed. And then the findings of fact come after that. And so what you would do is in the notice of decision piece is say this application was brought back up for reconsideration at meeting X, and then go from there and tell the story without it being minutes, and then go into your actual findings of fact.
But would you have to go back, and if you approve the application and then approve the findings of fact, you would have to go back on both of those and change? Indicate the
Yes,
change.
yes, you would, absolutely. Well, yes, you would. I mean, I think that's that would clearly be a clean way to do it. I don't know legally if you have to do it. I mean, clearly, if you're in that deep on a project, you're probably gonna want an opinion from your attorney anyway. But again, the findings of fact are really telling the story and your decision as to why you voted the way you did as a board. And yes, they get recorded. I'm not sure if they have to be reconsidered at the beginning of the process or not, because they are the end of the process, if you will. But yeah, if you get in that deep, I'd be having Galen call your attorney and say, hey.
Put them on speed dial.
So those are the kinds of things that I have for you tonight. I'd be happy to, talk about other stuff or answer any questions. One of the things I did write notes on here, only for my own edification for discussion, was the situation you have with your current ordinance as it relates to what I call de minimis changes. So, for example, the building that has the change of facade on the foundation, if you don't have a design review process, which looks at windows and roof pitches and sometimes materials like that, then I would consider that a de minimis change. You need to build it into your ordinance, but that would also, in many cases, depending on how you draft it, would give Galen the authority to approve that de minimis change, because even though it was mentioned in your findings of fact, it's not part of your official review because you don't do design review. If you did design review, then yes, it definitely would need to come back. On the other one, with the height differential, that one's a little stickier. I do agree. You ought to bring that back for discussion for several reasons. One of the things I wasn't clear on, and maybe you can clear it up for me, is it in the shoreland zone? Because if it's in the shoreline zone, you definitely want it to come back to you, because there are shoreline zone regulations that talk about height of building, even though it's a floodplain issue as well. Shoreline zone, I know in one of the other towns just south of here that I work with a lot, very sticky issues in their built-up area, in the shoreland area, when buildings are going to be higher than, a 35-foot limit or whatever they may require, because people lose their view corridors and other things. So, yeah, definitely you'd want that one to come back to you. Anything else I can talk about with you tonight?
Something else, Lee J, just to cover maybe, is the process moving forward with, you have public hearing.
Yep.
I know this probably comes up a lot with planning boards. So the developer comes in, they have an application, they have met the burden of proof when it comes to an application.
Finding it complete.
Yep, finding it
Okay,
complete.
yep.
And then we open it up for a public hearing. What statements or what needs to be provided by abutters who may be contesting the validity of this development? What would they need to bring forward as substantial evidence to counter what the developer has submitted for the record?
That's a really good question, because I see it in all shapes and sizes, if you will. People do bring forward written testimony, written material. Certainly the thing that, I as a staff person working with other boards and board members really like to see, if you will, is material information that, for example, and it was discussed a little bit tonight, but I'll stay away from that issue generally, is that if someone says, we've got spotted turtles in our neighborhood, well, anybody can say that, right? Mm-hmm. But if the beginning with habitat maps or some other emphatic information can be brought forward and say, look, IF&W has identified it as being spotted turtles in this area, then that is always great information. It's easy for someone just to say, oh, well, we've got them there. Prove it, Certainly you as a board are probably going to say, well, let's table this application, let's postpone this application till we can get some additional information if it becomes a really heavy issue for discussion. In some cases, I've seen one town ask us to communicate with Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, even though the application wasn't a big enough application to get to them for official review. The planning board said, we'd really like you to communicate with IF&W and find out from them if they can do a review and determine if there is an issue here. And lo and behold, they came back and said, no, there is not an issue. That's pretty, emphatic data from the state agency that does that review. So,
but general statements, usually that doesn't hold water. They need to provide something substantial to the board.
Absolutely. That carries a lot more weight.
Yeah.
Well, thinking back on one where we had the other U.S. survey maps or whatever that showed a stream going out.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that to me was better than somebody saying, well, I've seen water flowing down it.
Right.
You can say whether that map, how it was done. Well, it's an official document that holds more weight than personal eyeball.
So yes, and even in that case, it's a very fine line. But someone like Jimmy Long, who was here tonight with his applicant, can go out and determine that either is it a stream,
Yeah.
Or is it just a drainage ditch that gets water in it during a storm period?
Yep.
Because there is a difference.
Yep.
If it doesn't have a scoured base, and it doesn't have stone in it, and it doesn't have water in it 6 months out of the year, it is not a stream.
Yeah.
And, so you send someone out that has a soils background or an environmental background, and to walk that area, and maybe they say, well, from this point forward is a stream, but from this point back up, it's not a stream.
Well, there's terms that we use every day, and they're defined terms.
Yep.
And that just means, just like a vernal pool. Well,
Yep.
there's a very specific definition.
Correct.
When that's being used in that context. I can
Correct.
call it.
Absolutely.
Just like I can call it a stream, but, for the purpose of applying the requirements, it has to meet the definition thereof.
Absolutely. Yep.
And so, Lee J, how should the planning board address building code concerns from residents that aren't really related to the site plan application?
That's an easy one for me. Stay away from it. It's not your purview. Let the code officer deal with it.
So is that like things like blasting?
Do you have a blasting ordinance in town?
Yeah.
You do? Okay. If you have a blasting ordinance, chances are it's probably a submission requirement. If they do soils tests on the site before they come to you, part of their application, and they identify that there's ledge or that they're gonna have to do some blasting, then you'd wanna see a blasting plan as part of your submission. In order to make sure, I don't know if it's the fire department that handles it here or what department.
It's the code officer.
It is the code officer? Some towns do have it as the fire department, but whoever, they can at least look at the blasting plan. And what I find, I work in a town that does not have a blasting plan requirement, but I have asked for one, when I knew there was ledge in the project. The blasting companies aren't gonna mess around with that stuff, in the sense that they're gonna tell you, because they have to go out and do a survey, survey being photo documentation of properties usually within 500 feet of their blast areas, so that in some cases, pictures of foundations internally, so that if a crack happens, they can say, yeah, we did it, or, and our insurance will cover it, or, no, that crack was already here before we did our blasting, we've got documentation on it. They're not in the business of just coming in and doing their job and walking away. They need to have good documentation, and they won't mess around, on that. But if you have that requirement, certainly make sure you get it.
Well, we have the requirement that they have to first obtain a permit to blast from the code enforcement officer. Okay.
Yeah, prior to your planning board review, or subsequent to the planning board review,
I've always assumed it was after.
after,
That was
right,
part of,
which is fine.
Yeah.
part of when the code enforcement is applying that those requirements.
Yep,
We say that it's meeting the land use, or that, then they've met that, it's over to them to build it.
absolutely.
Like I'm not out there looking at foundations, and I'm not out there looking at plumbing or electrical. That's the code office.
Yep,
And I just kind of put blasting in that same one.
Well,
Most definitely.
It's written into the land use ordinance, and we've always assumed it goes to the code enforcement officer.
Yeah, it's the townwide regulations,
It's
section
townwide
6. Yep.
but does it come, well, not that you folks would, don't get me wrong, but you wouldn't know what to look for in it, but if you get it as part of the submission and make sure the code officer gets it, that's good, that's important. Absolutely.
But if residents have concerns about the aesthetics of, I don't like the windows or the foundation, the planning board should just stay away from those types.
Yeah, unless you have a design review component in your ordinance, and you don't, stay away from that, absolutely.
Well, that would come in during public hearings, but you're talking about after a building's built.
Well, I'm saying public hearing process.
Well, okay, so that would come out in a public hearing. Yeah.
Well, people could certainly raise it
People-
as a
people raise it,
concern,
but-
but if you don't have a design review standards, Kennebunkport, for example, has very explicit design review standards. So if a development is proposed next to a building that was built pre-1932, I want to say, or if they're in a particular zone, which is like in their downtown zone, they have to go through a checklist and make sure that that application meets all of the design review criteria, looking at windows and roof pitches, and they don't get into paint colors or anything like that, but, you know, major aesthetics of the design of the structure. They do go through that as part of their process.
Wow. No, we get a lot of issues raised that are not within our purview.
Mm-hmm.
For example, down in Shoreland and Cape Porpoise and so forth, they'll bring up, he's going to basically block my view.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's no view easement into a deed,
Yep.
then there's nothing that we can do. There's nothing in our ordinances that
Correct.
would correct that,
Correct.
block it.
You feel for those folks, but if there's nothing in your ordinance that gives you the ability to review that, and the project has or is meeting the height requirements of the zone, you know, then it's certainly an emotional factor, but it's one that you can't take into consideration in your review. If it became a contentious project and it went to court, and the attorney representing the applicant said, well, you know, they made their decision based on, you know, the view being blocked from, you know, people on the other side of the road, and there's no standard in your ordinance for that, judge is gonna say, go back and do it again, planning board.
Well, it's similar, the issue about headlights has come up, and it's always, you know, there isn't a set requirement about that, but can you all get together and be reasonable? And more often than not, the developer is reasonable.
Well, actually, you
There is-
can interpret from 1010A, from the standards that are set there. And that is one of the issues on one of the applications we have. And
I've
if you
seen-
have a developer that has a driveway that goes right out to the street, you're fine. But what if you have a driveway that's going to send headlights right into somebody else's house? Then you look at 1010A for, you know, standards, and they're written fairly broadly so that I think you can address that.
And if I'll take it a little further for you, if it's a finding that you have to make, that they're not providing glare to the neighbors, the abutting property, glare is in the sense of headlights, or even, you know, glass that sun may be hitting and creating a glare depending on certain sunlight issues, and you need to make that as a finding. That is certainly something you can use to either, usually it's like make the developer go back and find a way to correct it. I've used it myself in another community again, with a commercial development, fairly large commercial development, and we required that developer to plant a number of arborvitaes with the abutters' permission, or the people across the street from the entrance, with their permission to plant those arborvitaes to help screen those lights. If it's something in your findings that you have to make, you can certainly go back and require them to do something.
Any other questions?
All right. Well, thanks for having me down again.
Yes, thank you for making the trip down. We appreciate it.
That was good, thank you.
Mr.
Very
Chairman,
welcome.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Approve, yeah.
Got the right language.
Safe travels.
I wasn't allowed to interrupt anybody
Tomorrow?
speaking.
Yes.
Thank you.
Keep your wits about
Yeah.
you on the road.
Oh, I will.